I'm really delighted that this year, for the first time, we are welcoming representatives of phenomenological pedagogy and phenomenological educational science from every continent, well, except Antarctica. The symposium has truly become a global event. Whether the world is represented in it, how the world can be experienced, shared and distributed, and how we can take responsibility for and share this world in our common world in education and Bildung and learning. These are questions we want to discuss in this symposium. In the current global crisis, climate change, pandemic and populism, as well as the immense dynamics of global scientific, technological and digital transformations, we all experience that the fragmentation of the world in scientific analysis, technical research, as well as the distribution of the world in our social and educational practices had not led to humans' understanding, mediating and opening up for their world in the sense of broadening of horizons or individual development. Opening up the world through Bildung and education has turned into world forgetfulness. This is a word from Fink. Or into evidence-based concealment of the world, like Heidegger says. Or perhaps in world destruction somehow. So the decisive question today are how and whether is it possible to speak of one world in conceptual and empirical terms, and how this can be experienced, transmitted, presented and represented in education, Bildung and learning. Before I hand over to Jean-Luc Marion, I would like to present some brief sketches on the relationship between world and Bildung, world and education, as we think about in the context of a phenomenological, general educational science. So, my first short presentation is about the event of the world. Phenomenological reflections on the worldly theory of Bildung and education, and I will do it in 6 steps, following now, beginning with reshaping and re-engineering of the world. In modern times, thinking about the world has been reduced to humans as the sole creators and designers of social and societal world. Humans no longer see themselves as part of the world. Instead, the world is now regarded as the counterpart of thinking, acting, and researching, as a representation, an object, a thing that can be dominated, managed, and optimized. The triumph of this idea leads, in a dialectical reversion, to the destruction of the real world, not only the experimental and perceptible life world, but also to the destruction of nature and the earth of its whole. Phenomenology takes up the impulses of a critical genealogy of European science since Descartes, as advanced by Husserl, Hannah Arendt, Heidegger, Horkheimer, Adorno, and Foucault. It opposes the powerful metaphysical tradition in which the world is regarded as a totality of objects. According to the basic phenomenological belief, the world and the earth are not the sum of all things, objects or subjective horizons or perspectives, nor are they the container in which everything is performed. The thinking of Husserl, Heidegger, Fink and Marion on the world is taken as a starting point in which the connection between the world and thinking, or the world and Bildung and education, is addressed and problemized. It offers a critical perspective on how the world can be thought in opposition to the metaphysical fabulation or narration, as Nietzsche says, and scientific technical reshaping of the world. At the same time, it offers different starting points, how experience, Bildung and learning or practicing are to be determined in relation to the world. As I try to elaborate now, a double negativity becomes apparent. The negative experiences in learning and practicing reveal the negativity of the world, which manifests itself in a worldly event and experiences, and at the same time withdraws from it. In doing so, I will make a reversal. The thinking of the world, the experience of the world, and Bildung and education in the world should be not conceived from the subject's perspective, but rather the otherness of the world, its elsewhere, as Jean-Luc Marion says, should become the starting point for considerations orientated towards educational theory. I start now a short sketch on Humboldt's theory of Bildung. In theories of Bildung, the relationship to the world is regarded as central. Bildung should enable openness to other and foreign experiences and expand experience in specially arranged and staged worlds of Bildung, like Mollenhauer says. According to the common view, this enables a change in a person's relationship to him or herself and to the world as a turning of the gaze, a periagoge somehow, or a transformation of the person. Humboldt defines the interplay between the self and the world as a crucial relationship in and through which Bildung becomes possible. In this context, he refers to world as no man or no human, a phrase from Fichte, who thinks of the world from the a priori concept of the self as something that stands in opposition to the subject. As the object of power or action, the material of ideas or reflection, and as a representation in thought. These are Humboldt's 3 steps process in theory of Bildung. So Bildung is conceived as the internalization and appropriation of the world. In thinking about oneself and cultivating oneself, Humboldt argues, humans must bring themselves before themselves. That means represent themselves or something else, the world as an object. However, humans can always think and act by means of a third element, that is the world, as no man. Because they can only think something and act under the condition or by means of something else. In this negative phrasing, the world is the ultimative object. Humboldt thus stands in the metaphysical tradition above mentioned, according to which the world is a conception of the totality of being. The world is neither the all-compassing whole, the cosmos, nor creation, which refers to an afterlife, nor it is a common shared world to which we belong by life-world experience. In this respect, one can say with Käthe Meyer-Drave, the self conceived by Humboldt is, as it were, not of this world. In contrast to such a metaphysical, objectifying worldview, like Kant says, Husserl, in his famous Prague lectures, and at the end of his long life, examines the question of the world as a philosophical and empirical problem. In order to be able to ask about the world at all, it must be already known in some way. We humans are both subjects of the world and objects of the world. We are part of the world because we are made of the same material, the same stuff. Husserl determines the world as a life world, a prior coexistence with things. They are given to us in the acts of perception as embodied, given originally, originär gegeben. Husserl is concerned with how things in their meaning, reality in its fullness and its phenomenological character, as that which is perceived, remembered and judged, present themselves to us and reveal themselves in their givenness. Through the bound of intentionality, inwardness and outwardness, immanence and transcendence are already connected with each other. Husserl's intentional explanation is therefore, on the one hand, the description of the object in the modes of experience in which it shows itself, and at the same time, the analysis of the subjective occurrence of, with regard to the meaning given and enclosed therein, the given, noises. This brief makes itself known in the horizon. It opened up an area in which objects appear. In this only reason why things do not appear as backdrops and people as puppets, but have meaning, sense and gestalt for us. This is the only reason why we can perceive proximity and distance, past and future in their adumbrations. This briefly described the basis of perception of the life world as Husserl understands it. The life world is defined in this as is not seen as a geometric or physical object in an infinite universe, but as an historical life world, and thus removed from modern scientific objectivation and subjectivation. In another text, a later text, Husserl outlined this as a perspective on the world as a ground, and as earth, as arche. The earth does not move in our experience and perception. Jean-Luc Marion emphasizes this point. I quote, "For indeed every moment and every state of rest in the natural world of objects presupposes a ground and a point of reference that phenomenologically never move. Even if, physically speaking, it seems to move as a place where I find myself in my body. The earth is the ground to which I am physically and materially connected. It is always where my body holds me." Marion sees in this late Husserl text an anti-Copernican counter-revolution, a turnaround that restores the earth and the world in their rightful place against the reshaping and re-engineering of modern measuring and surveying objectivity and bracketing them. Then it becomes apparent that there is a gap, a difference between things as being and instrumentally arranged objects. Metaphysically and technical objectivation, I quote, does not bring natural things to their fulfillment, but replaces them with a reliable substitute. But there remains a residue of a thing, which the object does not observe. The residue, because it's too material, too variable, remains, strictly speaking, I quote, on the borderline of the object. And because it is no longer passes away in the natural circle, this waste, this residue, remains rubbish. Seen in this light, the climate crisis is a residual effect of the metaphysical reshaping of the world, which can hardly be recycled, but in reality makes the hopeless triumph of the ontology of the object and the failure of the metaphysica generalis. However, according to Marion in his Phenomenology of being given and revelation, it is possible to think of the world as something that opened up in space in their potentiality. Only then, according to Marion, with against Derrida, can an event be brought of as the possible and impossible. The metaphysical critical concept of difference is also taken up by Eugen Fink's cosmological-oriented social phenomenology and praxeology. Being in the world means being related to and being permeated by the world, because we humans are part of it, and at the same time we can relate to it. Unlike Husserl, Heidegger and Merleau-Ponty, Fink does not assume that the human relationship to the world can be understood as a relationship to things, as a correlate of consciousness, or in readiness to hand or unreadiness to hand, like Heidegger says, Unzuhandenheit, Zuhandenheit. Fink regards this that which encompasses, gives space, gives time, which, according to Heraclit and Nietzsche, is both one and many. This is the world. The world is the unspeakable, the conceptually interminable, that which can only be expressed in images, in metaphors. The world is beyond the logic of representation and the metaphysics of the subject and object. Fink transforms the phenomenological reduction into a cosmological reduction, which places the inner worldly being in the difference to the encompassing whole, that to that which gives space and gives time. This whole is defined as a difference in a metaphysic critical manner. According to Fink, the world eludes us. It is only fragmentary and can only be experienced negatively. It does not reveal itself as a phenomenon, but rather in a difference between the inner worldly experience of our life world and the all-encompassing whole. Fink describes this difference as the Urteilung of being in the world. Urteilung means not only judgment, it is the differentiation in the fundament of the world. The world presents, the world's presence in experience is not due an ontology of life world, of being or of things, nor to a representation or idea, a concept or a term. For Fink, all of these are metaphysical contributions to fabulation or narration of the world, like Nietzsche says. Rather, Fink dynamizes the space-time of world itself as becoming, or in German, Walte. In experience as an event, an ontological, cosmological difference manifests itself as a gap, a break in experience, which is concealed on the one hand and revealed on the other hand. But how can a negative experience in and of the world be described as an experience? This can be illustrated by using the examples of movement experience in repetitive practising. Practising is a strenuous and difficult educational activity that is often underestimated, whether it be mental or spiritual exercises, practices of imagination, exercises in judgment, or even physical practices. Here too I continue to criticize the marginalization of practicing in its incorrect dualistic conceptualization in philosophy and education of the West. In general, people only practice when they cannot perform the desired skill or ability. Nevertheless, practices such as skiing, swimming, or cycling demonstrate skill is not achieved solely through the intention or desire of the practitioner. Rather, repetition brings out a break, a rupture, and the difference mentioned above becomes tangible. When practicing a complex movement like skiing, swimming, or cycling, the intended skill only becomes into being at the moment when I realize that the water is carrying me, the ski is gliding, the speed is keeping me in the curve. In other words, when I entrust myself to the thing, to the medium, to the earth, then something surprises, unforeseen, and new happens. I can do something precisely because I devote myself. Something else emerges that I could neither intend nor know beforehand. Although this event can be prepared for through practicing, the event itself, which breaks into the repetition, cannot be prepared for. It happens in the sense of an unavailability, a passive experience. This opens up a new, different space with other possibilities for moving around on skis and bikes, as well as a new sociality with peers and other people. It also opens up a different time for those who can now experience things faster, more intensely, or simply different. However, none of this happens because I want it, aimed for, or intended, but because something happens to me passively on the ground something reveals itself through itself, something that gives itself from elsewhere, like Marion says, and to which I can respond with and through my body. This is why it is difficult to put it in words. It implies a different logic than that of physical or psychological causality. Rather, the response we humans give in our practice is always too late. For what happens? The event that occurs in practicing and repetitive experience of movement could also be illustrated by other examples, such as aesthetic experience of listening music, for example, contemplating a picture, or experience love in the erotic experience. In all cases, the event is something unheard of, unseen, untouched, something that transcends the order of immanence of the real world and at the same time remains part of this world. The event of negative, this Bildung-event, I would say, is embedded in the life world and social orders, in the doxa of our life world. Its effect is very much manifest, invisible to each other, to others. Precisely for this reason, it is not contingent and not accidental. At the same time, however, it also transcends these orders by transgressing them. This transcendence can be experienced as a turnaround, as a conversion of the whole person, who now experience a new and different relationship to the world and to themselves, a Bildung experience. The new beginning of the event, of the formative repetitive experience, which can be prepared for, is not at my disposal, can thus be experienced this immanence as a dawn of a new world. So, Bildungsexperience and education. So, how can world can be experienced? The answer to this question cannot be given in positive terms, in the sense of defining and fixing the world in concepts or theories. Rather, the answer is negative, in two ways. In experience, the world eludes us, even if, paradoxically, it reveals itself in negative experience. It only gives itself when there is a dedication or receptivity to let be what shows itself. The showing of the world as a genitivus, subjectivus, and objectivus is to be determined negatively in a double withdrawal with mundane experience and theoretical concepts. This opens up a new different view of the normativity of education. The goals, norms, and values of education, as well as their legitimation, must also be adjusted in relation to the world. Educational practices, as we have developed in our recent project of the phenomenological operative praxeology, for example, showing, mentoring, practicing, mediating, teaching, judging, caring, playing, discussing, disciplining, questioning, they have a structure that on the one hand articulates impositions on the educators and at the same time on those being educated, and on the other hand allows passivity to be experienced in these impositions, which make it apparent that education is by no means limited to its objectives. Rather, educational practices should embrace the aforementioned passivity, so that they not only represent cultural techniques, social norms or knowledge, but also show the world and let it give itself in showing. The experience of the world and the mundane Bildungsexperience and educational practice are therefore only possible in the mode of accepting, receiving, hinnehmen in German, or passive openness. Human beings must refrain from acting on their own behalf. Seeing is this life, education aims at an opening to the world, because the Bildungsexperience begins with a de-education. It's Entbildung. It's a word from Meister Eckhart, who first invented the word Bildung in the German language in the 13th century. This Entbildung, de-education, cannot be active, rational or intentional exploration or mediation of the world. Only then the Bildung-event occur with the possibility of a new beginning. Thank you very much for listening.